part of Project 571, genetically engineered vampire created to destroy evil.
What do you want?
We need your help to kill a vampire.
Malleus Maleficario. It was written by a witch. The first witch. Titania.
That was a little snippet from The Witch's Hammer, the first film I ever solo directed, and it's just been remastered and re-released on Amazon. So if you like witches and vampires, then please do check it out. Anyway, let's get on with this week's episode. Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast. So, a bit of a change of pace this week. I'm going to be talking about my previous feature film, The Witch's Hammer, which is out now on Tubi and Amazon. And filmmaker Michael Marco has stepped in to host this episode and quiz me. I don't know any of the questions he's going to ask me, so I'm going to hand over to Michael.
Well, thank you for having me, Jim. It's a pleasure to be back, and it was a pleasure watching your movie. So, I had a lot of questions because I did my first film around that same time. So I was like, wow, I was wondering if Jim would be open to actually answer a few questions for the fans out there, So I'm going to jump right into it. And I was going to ask you, the Witch's Hammer was released in 2006.
Yeah.
That's your first film, correct?
It's my first solo directed film. So I did a couple of movies where I was a co-director, but this was my first kind of like feature on my own.
And what was the inspiration behind this movie? Why this movie? It's got such a great mix: vampires, witches, in period settings, contemporary storylines. You got kung fu fights, you got special effects. I mean, you packed it all. And for back then, it's impressive. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on that now, that is insane to do that on your first feature film, isn't it? To do period piece stuff, kung fu fights, vampires, special effects, martial arts and stuff. So maybe that was an error. I think at the time we were probably watching a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so that's where the vampire stuff came in. I think Lord of the Rings had come out, so I was a bit into those kind of quest movies, because we actually started shooting it, I think, in 2003. So it was took a long time to put together because it was shot on 35mm. And in the awkward thing about that is, in the time that we shot it, movies like Underworld came out, for example. So when this came out, everyone thought I'd just kind of copied that and done a version of Underworld. So yeah, inspiration, love a vampire movie, love a quest movie, love a bit of magic, special effects, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's like usually people tell you on your first movie, get a bunch of kids, send them off into the woods, start killing them one at a time every 10 minutes, then wrap it up with a little Scooby-Doo ending. But you were like, well, no, I don't want to do that. So how hard was it to actually raise the money to do something like that? How did you go about it?
So it was done with a mixture of my own money and some private investment. And we had a good relationship with a private investor who was up for putting some cash into the film. Ironically, I don't know if the word ironic's right, but I had a conversation with him, sent him the script, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I don't like it." He said, "I don't like it. I don't get it, but I'm not the target audience, so go for it." So that's the cash pretty much came from him and myself to put the film together.
So you said you shot that on 35mm. You obviously put a lot of heart into it, and at the time when shooting movies on 35 was extremely expensive, were there any thoughts, any talk about maybe doing something else? Which at the time HD wasn't around, so it was either video or film, or you just had your heart set onto film, and that's all there was.
I think for me, so I'd come off the last two feature films I made were on Super 16, and back then we'd gone to Cannes with those films. The market was a lot healthier. There was a lot less out there, so there were people actually who wanted your project. We'd done a film on Super 16 that had made a lot of money, not for us, incidentally, got screwed out of that. But what we were hearing from the sales agents and distributors were, oh, you'll get a lot more money for something shot on 35mm. If it's shot on 35mm, raises the kind of quality, prestige of the project. So that was the behind the decision for it. Also, Super 16, I love it. It's got a real nice gritty look to it. But I think for this project, I sort of wanted to raise the bar a little bit. I don't think I anticipated how much it would cost. Not just the stock, developing, the equipment, and the sort of constraints that puts on you as far as how heavy the equipment is, long setups take, how key the lighting, all that kind of stuff. So had I known that, I'm not sure what I would have done, because like you said, there was no HD video to shoot on. So I think I probably would have just done it anyway.
Tell me about the genre. I mean, obviously you're mixing all this different genre, but how long did it take you to write the first draft, and then for you to just realize, you know what? Yeah, I can make that into a feature, because it's a chunk, And how did you go about that? Did you get knocked down by people being like, man, you gotta go smaller for your first solo, movie? What happened there?
I don't think I did, because I think so. My wife produced the film, and this was the first one she'd produced with me. And I think I wrote an original script, which we started to film, but because I had to keep raising money to pay for all this film stock, whether it was on credit cards or getting more investment money in, we'd shoot maybe for like a week, 2 weeks, then have a long period before shooting again. So the script did change and evolve over that period. And there's probably things in it. So like you said, there's an entire sequence set in a medieval village. There's an entire sequence in like a Spanish villa. Some of those sequences may have changed because I couldn't get my hands on what other ridiculous thing I'd written into the script. But over time, we kind of made it all fit.
How much did your vision actually change from the actual execution when you look at the final cut? Did you have any kind of like happy accident that kind of made it better than you planned, or anything like that along the way?
I think I wrote it not thinking about locations, which is a big no. I think if I'm giving anyone advice, is locations are so important. But we lucked out in that Southampton, where we're based, has got a network of underground vaults. And back then they were a lot more easily accessible, because obviously filming didn't happen that often. So we got access to all of those, which meant those locations really, again, added to the budget. So I think when we screened the film, I think people were surprised, not only with the quality of the image, because it's 35mm, but by the lots of different locations, and they were all big grand locations, these kind of caves or almost like castle locations that you wouldn't assume an indie film would get.
Yeah, I mean, the location are fantastic. The castle, the cemetery in which you shot in also is beautiful cemetery. Almost like I've never seen a cemetery like that, with so many trees. I mean, just gorgeous location, but the props as well. You got a Gatling gun in there that she's firing. I mean, how did you get all these props? I mean, you're firing weapons, I know that some of them might have been done, digitally, which, by the way, for a movie that was released in 2006, those special effects look great, man. I was like, wow, they're fun. It never stops. The fun keeps on going. And I mean, just the production value for first flick, I got to tell you, man, I was very impressed.
Thank you.
I loved it. So the special effects. Tell me about how you got the green light to do something. How did you find your visual artist?
So the other thing I discovered shooting the film is how long special effects take when you're on a really low budget, because essentially the person who's putting those effects together is doing them in between much higher priority paid work. So they do look good, the effects in the film, and I would say about half of them were done by a visual effects artist, and they took a long time because we were constantly waiting for shots to come through. The other half, I think I just taught myself how to do bits and bobs to kind of fill in and figure stuff out. Maybe it looks okay because it's on 35mm, and maybe that adds something to the grain or something, makes us get away with a little bit more with the effects. But yeah, again, big mistake. Don't stick a ton of effects in your first indie feature unless you know how to do effects.
Well, I think you pulled it off very, very nicely, man. So congrats on that as well, And, Orson Welles once said, when he looked back in his life, it's 95% running around trying to find the money and only 5% of actually doing the making of it. So how do you relate to something like that?
Yeah, I think that is, unfortunately, that's the filmmaking world we all live in, isn't it? That those two ends of the process, raising finance and then making money, are so hard, and they can be soul destroying because they can last a long time. So that initial phase of trying to get people to invest in your film is a lot of people saying no. It's at least, I think the ratio I would use, which is the same with sales and distribution, is 20 no's for one maybe, and then out of 50 maybes you might get a yes. And the same with sales and distribution, trying to find a good, reliable sales and distribution company. If you're going to do that worldwide, you've got to swim through all the sharks, and then you've got to find that 1 in 100 person who's actually going to get behind your movie, promote it, and sell it properly.
And how did you find your distributor?
Distribution. Oh, now you're taking me back to The Witch's Hammer. I think for that one, because we'd been burnt so badly on the previous film, we did spend a little bit of time looking for the right people. And I remember originally I was like, right, I'm doing distribution on my own. I'm going to send out my own screeners. I'm going to deal with distributors, and they're going to come straight to me, and I'm going to supply the film to them. This was a long time ago. So obviously we're talking, they're going to expect a Betamax copy of the film, and they're going to expect QC reports and all this kind of malarkey. And so I sent the film off, and I remember we went on a holiday. We went to a place called Portland, Isle of Portland. So it's a little bit kind of out of the way, not a great mobile signal. But the week after I sent them out, I started to get phone calls from people. And I can't remember the amount he offered me, but someone from a reasonably good distribution company said, hey, they've seen the film, I'll give you this much for it. And at the time, I didn't know that was a good offer. So I was kind of a bit, well, we're not ready to sign yet. We're hedging our bets a bit. We're going to think about it. And I should have took that offer. And then later down the line, having been through that sales and distribution process and not finding the right home for it, we went with a US sales agent who was pretty good and managed to sell to maybe 5 or 6 of the big territories.
Why redoing the audio mix? Why did you decide now to release the movie with a new mix?
I think, well, 2 reasons. One was that the film had come back to us. So again, here's a tip for indie filmmakers: if you're signing a contract, make sure you're happy with the term. So 7 to 10 years, maybe. I mean, I know there are some contracts out there where they put till infinity on it or whatever. But since this was a while ago, the film came back to us, and we waited until all of those territories had come back to us, so we could then self-distribute it and not have to worry about territories, about where it's going to hit. It could essentially be released anywhere. We own all the rights. That was the first reason. The second reason was, when it was released originally, it wasn't in the age of social media and the age of easier self-promotion. Really, all you could do back then was probably get it in a magazine article, maybe local television, newspaper if you're lucky. So it's interesting now, and I've been quite pleased with the success. I've been putting sort of reels up, particularly on YouTube, little scenes from the film, and I've been really pleased with how people have responded to those and watched them. So so it was all about getting the rights back and then doing a proper promotion plan for the film.
Did did this one actually help open doors for your next movies?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think maybe it helped um, us appear more legit because we'd shot a film on 35mm. I don't know that it opened doors. I don't know that it maybe with sales and distribution, maybe there was a couple of people we'd talked to about the film who we might have gone back to at a later date. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
As far as the cast and crew, how did you put it together? Have you worked with them before? Did you have already a relationship with them, or did you have to go through the casting process as well?
Yeah, we had a full-on casting process for the film. I mean, we've got Stephanie Beacham in it. So she used to be in a show called The Colbys, which was a spin-off of Dynasty. So she plays like Madeline in the film. And I knew I'd met her before on a previous film and knew I wanted to work with her again. And I used to watch Dynasty with my mum growing up, so it was kind of that, oh, let's get her in here. I like those kind of classic actresses. As for everyone else, the guy who plays Edward, Jonathan Sidgwick, he was a friend. We'd worked with him on our last feature film. We knew we wanted to bring him over because as I'm sure you're aware, you work with people who are not only good actors but easy to get on with, that you know you're going to spend a month in the trenches with. So he was definitely that person. And then the lead actress, Claudia, we put out a general auditioned a ton of people, but she had the right mix of acting, but also the ability to learn the fighting stuff. Because I believe she'd done some dance, that kind of stuff. So her body was already conditioned to movement and being able to kind of learn that choreography.
Yeah, Chris Tanaka, I believe, was your choreographer.
That's right. Yeah.
And you had a very interesting way to shoot some of those scenes. Usually, people kind of jump in; they want to do handheld close-ups, quick, fast. And you're like, no, man, I'm gonna let it breathe. I'm gonna pull back a little bit, and I'm gonna let the actors do their job. So tell me about that process, because it's a little unusual.
Yeah, maybe it is unusual now. Maybe back then it wasn't so unusual, because I think we were probably, I'm trying to think of the sort of films that would have come out and influenced. So maybe like something like The Matrix, where you're watching actors fight for real, and you do get to watch everything, but also the size of that camera, the weight of it, you couldn't do handheld with it. It would be impossible. So I guess I lent more into that. Let's make it look beautiful. Let's put some slow-mo in there. Let's roll the camera for as long as we can. The other thing is, when you're trying to save money and you know that when that camera's spinning, it's spending money, you want to get as much as possible out of it. So if you can shoot an entire action sequence in one shot, then hallelujah, you're going to save a ton of money.
And you shot with one camera.
Yeah.
Right. So that can be very challenging too, as I found out myself. It's really cool because you can, position the camera in a way that, you would see the other camera if you're doing an over the shoulder or not. But it also extend the process kind of, you got to do it some few times actually to get it right. And then you got to spin it. And I remember on some projects I had what's called, I ran into what I call the selfish actor. The selfish actor being the actor that turns it up when he's on camera, but then when it's behind the camera, he's just reading the lines, which can be extremely tricky, especially when you're editing. As you know, you've edited the movie, and we're going to touch upon that in a minute. But tell me about your experience working on set with shooting with one camera and having to deal with that kind of situation.
So the interesting thing about that is, so Stephanie Beacham had been on a major soap opera for, say, 10 years. So she knows a movie set, she knows a TV set inside out. And what she would do is, say we're doing a shot reverse shot, she would deliver her lines, and then while the other actress is delivering her lines, she might turn away, like in a way that when you're watching it, you're like, oh, I like what she's doing. It's kind of, it fits the scene. There's a scene in particular where she's kind of facing off against someone, and she's grabbing her wrist, and she kind of turns away. And at the time I thought, oh, that's really good. When you watch it in the edit, you're like, no, what she's doing is she's turning the other person's close-up into her close-up because she's turning into camera, and now suddenly she's completely in focus and we're watching her. So that's probably a trick she got from soap operas. The other thing I'll say about those cameras, which totally geeked me out when we were filming, was that they were the same. So they were Panavision cameras, 35mm cameras. They were the same cameras they used on Tim Burton's Batman, which I absolutely love. So for us to be using a camera from that movie was just amazing.
Oh man, what a trip. Yeah, I remember when that movie came out in 1989. That was a big year, man. That was a big year. What was the toughest day that you had on set where you were like, man, I don't know what's going on, but it's like life has a funny way of throwing things at you, just like you're in the thick of it. You're doing your passion project you worked on so hard, and things starts to happen, and sometimes you're just like, man, I don't know, it might be a death in the family, it might be, things happen, and you can't just stop. You got people, you got to go, you got to keep going, so anything crazy happened like that, anything, I mean, I don't want to say crazy, but tough to deal with as you were going through it.
There was a moment very early on with these wonderful Panavision cameras where a camera assistant removed something from the camera that's not supposed to come out. So I think maybe he was loading the film or something, and he undid a screw, and a piece came out, and he showed it to the DOP, and the DOP just melted down and was just like, what have you done? Why did you take this out? And they couldn't get it back in. They couldn't get back into the camera. And at the time, obviously Panavision had done us an amazing deal to get these cameras. And at the time we were thinking, if we tell them this, they could just take all the cameras away from us. This could be it. Game over. Film could be shut down. Thankfully, they managed to get this piece back into the camera. We did take the cameras back to Panavision. They did examine them because I think the DOP said, oh, this seems to be a little bit loose. It wasn't as big a deal as we'd thought, but in that moment, it did feel like, well, this, this is it. This tiny little piece of metal is going to take us off the rails.
Yeah. Did you learn anything as a first time filmmaker? I mean, for your first feature, like a hacks or a trick or something, because when you go in, usually you're like, hey, I'm hoping, even as a director or as a writer, I'm like, I'm going to learn something from this new director of photography, or this new set dresser or director or whatever. And, for me, it was realizing that sometimes you don't need to see the whole picture or worry about the whole picture, but just worry about what's in the frame. And that saves a lot of time to just be like, hey, don't worry about what's behind there because we already shot it and we're not going to see it again. But, and you're like, oh, wait, I never thought of that. To just worry about what's in the frame. Anything like that for you?
I think mine would be in the preparation end, and it would be that the two films we shot previously, we just kind of made it up as we went along. This one, I storyboarded every single shot, had a shot list, had my book. I mean, I'm working on a short at the moment. My book's here with my terrible storyboards on it. But that's my Bible, and without that, I can't function. I can't hold all of that information in my head. Maybe if I was doing something that was a bit more just about a performance and two actors, and I had a lot more time, I would be more relaxed. But on any film I shoot, I have to have those storyboards, and I have to be the person on set who knows it the most, who knows it inside out. And that's on that film, I think I learned the power of preparation.
So when the movie was initially released, what was the reaction when it was released in 2006?
Yeah, it was pretty good, actually. We got a ton of really good reviews. And I think that's because there weren't that many things like this out there. There was more stuff like this in America, so there wasn't a lot of British vampire indie films. There was, I think, Razorblade Smile was the first kind of big indie vampire movie, but ours had a bit more emphasis on like martial arts and magic. It wasn't such a horror. So yeah, I think that I was pleased with the reception. I was really pleased with the reviews. You know, I'd be over the moon with those reviews now, but obviously these days you've pretty much got to pay for reviews, or you know what I mean, it's a lot harder to get those reviews. But yeah, back then we had loads of magazine articles. So yeah, I was really happy with the way it was received.
And so what were the moment that made you decide to re-release the film and to get back and work on the audio, and how did this new audio mix change the viewing experience?
I think it was something I've always wanted to do, because we wanted, I think when it got put on DVD, it was a lower resolution copy, so it didn't show it in its best light. And one of the things about it is I think it looks really nice as a film. It looks nice, 35mm, lots of color, really like it. So I think we always knew we wanted to re-release it, but I think maybe we were just waiting for maybe the American rights to come back to us, and then we knew we'd push the button on it. But also probably what we were waiting for is self-distribution to become as easy as it is currently, because the choice would have been, okay, I've got my film back, who am I going to give it to now? Are they going to sell it properly? Are they going to promote it? Is it just going to sit in their catalogue for a year? Whereas this was, right, give it to me. It's going straight up on Film Hub. I'm going to get it on as many platforms as possible, and I'm going to be responsible for promoting it this time.
Yeah, it sure has changed. The landscape of distribution is very different than what it used to be, you know. Yeah, you know, to quote the great Orson Welles again, you know, he said there are three kinds of movies: the one you write, the one you shoot, and the one you cut. And how do you find that, especially when you're a writer, director, editor? How true is that?
Oh yeah, I think you're constantly letting go of a version of the film in your head. So you write it, you've got a version, you start filming it, it's completely different. It's not necessarily worse, it's just very different to what was in your head. And when you're on set, you're shooting it, then you get into the edit suite, and the things you'd remembered you'd shot on set are slightly different than you remembered, and you cut it together and it just becomes this other beautiful thing. But yeah, throughout those every process, and even when you get sound on it and music, each time it evolves and becomes this slightly different version of what you'd imagined originally.
Yeah, you know, when you're writing, you're directing, you're editing. In my case, you know, for my movie, I was also in it. It's like every time I would go on a set, I'd be like, oh my God, what beast are we gonna have to fight today? You know, and then you get your day in the can, and then you're like, okay, well, there's, you know, that one day is done, but then there's another 20, 22, 25, you know, and you just look at it like a mountain, you know, this giant mountain you got to climb, and the pressure. I mean, you know, some people don't realize, but there's a lot of it on you. You're producing, you're writing, you're directing, you're editing, and it's like, if this thing doesn't go, there's a lot on me, you know. So how do you deal with that kind of? Do you just like black it out? How do you don't worry about it and roll the dice? What's your philosophy behind that?
I think I'm lucky in that, because my wife produces, she probably takes on the majority of that worry. I think I'm in life as well. I think I'm more of if something goes horrifically wrong, I probably don't get as upset as I should. I think I just go, oh well, maybe is that a Buddhist way of looking at it? Oh well, you know, when you think there's a beautiful vase, the vase is already broken to me, because one day that vase is going to break. So I think with the film stuff, there is a lot of pressure. Once we start rolling, I think I forget about that pressure. The pressure's usually the night before the first day of the shoot. And then once you're off, you're off. Just got to hold on.
I mean, when you look back at almost 20 years now, how do you feel about the film today?
I'm proud of it. Like myself and my wife, we're really proud of it, because it represents to us a kind of block of time in our lives. So it's just before we had kids, and it was for the most part, I really enjoyed filming it, and we put a lot of love into that film. A lot of love and a lot of care, and everybody did, because I think everybody realised that because it cost so much because of 35 mil, there was a lot of pressure on everybody to get their particular jobs right. We made a lot of lifelong friends making that film. So yeah, I look back at it fondly, and I am proud of it. It's kind of like probably the only film, I'm trying to think of my other ones, probably the only film I've made that ends on an upbeat note. So it's a positive movie, that's another thing going for it. So yeah, I've got fond memories of it, and I hope people give it a chance. I hope they watch it, just enjoy it.
That they should. It's a great achievement that you guys did. So you should be proud for sure. Well, Jim, we talked about the cast, we talked about the crew, we talked about the writing, we talked about the producing, and we talked about the directing as well. Is there anything else you think you want to share with us?
I think I'd just say, if this has been of interest and you want to watch the film, then head over to Amazon, head over to Tubi, give it a watch, give us a review. Reviews matter for indie filmmakers. They really do. They help the algorithm spread the film further. But yeah, check the film out.
Absolutely. Look at it. It's a wonderful ride. You won't be disappointed. It was a blast. I had a great time. Thanks for having me, Jim, and thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks a lot for listening to that episode. That was a bit strange for me answering questions, but I hope that was interesting. If you want to listen to another episode of the podcast, I'd suggest you listen to the one with me talking to Michael about his film. And he talks about the process of making it, and I do a deep dive into all of that. So I'll see you on the next one.